For today's session, we'll start by just talking about what is Copilot, what's the engineering behind it, how does it actually work. In that how it works section, we'll also talk about how it is secured as well too, so you can feel confident in using this tool in your enterprise and your environment. And we'll show off where to get started. So what some of the new features are, how to begin your journey. And then we'll talk about what all you can do there. So Scott's recorded some videos profiling some different capabilities that you have in there. So we'll show you how you can do that. And then I'll spend some time at the end going over some next steps and what's next on your journey as you get Copilot integrated into your environment. So with that, I'll hand it over to Scott to talk a little bit about what Copilot really is.
Awesome, Eric. Really appreciate it. So really excited to give some more content here, obviously, as we go through this and understand a little bit more of how Copilot works. And really what I want to do is I just want to show a diagram that basically outlays the flow that you go through with Copilot, so you kind of understand some of the inner workings. Now, we're not going to get super technical in this session, but the great thing about it is understanding the capabilities will allow you then to really use all the Microsoft applications to the fullest extent, really when it comes to the Copilot capabilities. So first and foremost here, if we actually take a look at Copilot, there's primarily four different components that we're going to talk through. We have our applications, we have our Copilot service, we have a large language model, and we have what's called Microsoft Graph. High level, Graph is a way that you can access your emails, your chats, your contact details. A large language model is like ChatGPT that can interpret natural language and then do something with it. And then in the middle, the Copilot service is really what's doing what we call orchestration of all these different types of processes then when it comes to Copilot. So if we pretend we're doing a PowerPoint as an example, and we say, hey, I'd like you to generate a PowerPoint from this Word file, what's happening is that PowerPoint application, when it's using Copilot, is actually accessing the Copilot orchestration service. And what it's doing is it's taking the content that you've asked of it. In this example, I have a Word document that I'm referencing. And because the Graph API is what we use to get that detail, what Copilot does is it goes and it grabs that document that I told Copilot to generate basically a PowerPoint from. What it then does is it takes that Word document, takes that prompt, brings it to a large language model, and the large language model then interprets that Word document as an example, and then breaks it out into what we commonly look at when it comes to large language models, which is a reply in text that has the detail then in terms of then what we're asking it to do. In this example, generating a PowerPoint file, right? So as a part of this, then, one of the final things that occurs as well, because as part of that generation, you may have rules, for example, on your domain or in your tenant that basically states that you don't want certain things to be shared potentially, right? We call that post-processing basically inside of Copilot. But what's happening now is that that response that's coming through is being validated, that it abides really by your tenant security principles. And finally, what happens here is that that response is then delivered back to the end user, so that new shiny PowerPoint is generated as a part of that process. Now, as you can see here, there are a bunch of different terms and steps that are used as a part of this. But the key thing to note is that with Microsoft Copilot, we are able to use basically any Microsoft application to then do something for us in a digital space that a typical human would do, but with what Copilot does to really assist you as you go through that process. Now, one of the things to note is that there are some basics that you always need to really look at first when you start looking at using Copilot. Examples of this, your private files, for example, are not accessible because remember, files, when we're saying reference this Word document, are the files that are stored in the OneDrive that are related then to that tenant, right? So just note that it's not something that you can just reference any file. It has to be secured properly, especially in an enterprise environment, to access that. And your personal files on your computer are typically not going to be accessed then as part of that Copilot enablement. Now, I say typically automatically, because remember, there are ways to make it so that computers can automatically upload Word documents to the corporate network or OneDrive, remember. So they would look like they're accessible from an end user experience, but really that's a policy that's been put in place by an administrator. Some of the other things I just want to kind of mention here as well. Remember, when it comes to content management and governance, we've got lots of Copilot capabilities that really are only accessible then from that capability. Your data, for example, is never used to train these models. Copilot is assistive, and so that is a very fundamental concept inside of Copilot, where it's not really designed to replace a human per se. It's basically there to assist humans to make them go faster at their job, and we're going to see more of that today as well. And then finally, remember, security is everywhere. And just to kind of double down on that, remember that with Copilot, your data is your data. Your data is not used to train AI models, and your data is protected within that tenant sphere as well as you go through a lot of those processes. So that trust perspective is really critical, as you can imagine, as you go through your journey. I guess with that, Eric, let's keep rolling because I know we've got a lot more content from a benefits, value, and functionality that you wanted to get into, but that's kind of the high level of how Copilot works.
Yeah, I think it's important to stop for a minute and just share that security is Microsoft's utmost importance as it rolls out this AI. It's got to be trustworthy AI. It's got to be something that you believe in and something that allows you to keep your data secure inside your tenant. So Microsoft's gone to great lengths to do that. That's why Scott walked you through a little bit about how it works so you understand that, because we understand that that's a concern that a lot of people have, is making sure their data is secured. We're using it internally as well. We've taken a lot of steps from a security standpoint to make sure that we were in a good position to be able to use that. And that's how we start off the engagements as well, too, just making sure that you are in a position to do this securely. So just want to continue to stress the importance of making sure that you get that right. But with that, now let's jump into a little bit about what you can do with it. There's so much you can do with it, and we wanted to highlight a few of these things, and you can take it a lot further from here as well, too. But we'll jump in by talking about just the enterprise-enabled Copilot capabilities. So if you go out to copilot.microsoft.com, you can use that search personally, or you can use that search through your work, through your domain. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on here, is what are those solutions, or how can you use this inside your enterprise? And so one of the great ways, we talked about the capability of Copilot and the large language model and the commercial data protection component of it as well, too, is just a critical part of what you can do with it. And all of these, when you use it inside your domain now, you not only get the capabilities that you would have if you were just searching the internet, but you get that Microsoft Graph grounding, which means that it has access to all of the information within your network that you have access to individually. So that's what the integration with the Microsoft Graph and the apps does as well, too. And then enterprise grade data protection, using your your internal security to make sure that it is protected. And then you also get access to Copilot Studio. We won't talk as much about Copilot Studio and agents today, but getting Copilot implemented within your environment is going to enable you to do even more with agents and being able to create virtual assistants within your business, or automated assistants. So here are some of the Copilots that are available within Microsoft 365. So we'll briefly talk about Teams Chat or Biz Chat, the Microsoft 365 chat component where you can ask it questions. It can look at the internet. It can also look then internally into your files that you have within your network. For example, like if I want to look up who's our dental provider, it will actually look that up based on the fact that we've got that information in SharePoint and Teams within our environment. And then Copilot in Teams will share some examples of being able to do intelligent meeting recaps, be able to chat again with your biz chat within Teams as well, too. Outlook, there's so much you can do in Outlook with creating new, drafting new content. There's generating summaries. You can catch up on a long string if you're the 24th person to be, you get forwarded an email with 20 emails in it. You can catch up on it real quick instead of reading all 20 of those emails. Scott's got a video showing you what you can do in Word and PowerPoint as well. So we'll let that speak for itself. Excel, so much more you can do with data, identifying insights, summarize data, generate formulas in there. I really like the OneNote capability too, because I take a lot of notes in OneNote. So and when I go to meetings and just am taking notes all the way throughout, I can get it summarized at the end, so it can put it in a more logical order than where I've taken those live notes. Loop is probably a capability that not a lot of people have heard about, but that is the ability to take a component from one of the Microsoft 365s and put it into another application. So you can take a Word document that you've written, stick that in PowerPoint or Excel. You can use it for like doing polls in Teams and things like that. You can use forms components there. So that is a way to just take something out of one of the apps and put it into another one. And then you can use it in Whiteboard as well too. So let's show off a few of the examples once we talk a little bit about some of the benefits. So like why would you end up using Copilot for Microsoft 365? I mean, ultimately, it's a productivity enhancer. You want to be able to get more done quickly, and that's what Copilot can do for you. And it can really help you get started. So a lot of people talk about, well, if you write something with AI, it looks like it was written with AI. And that is to a certain extent true. But you know what is great about AI is you can get started a lot faster. So if you've got to write a big presentation on something, let AI get it started for you. Let Copilot create those 12 slides for you, and then you can go back and put it into your tone and make any updates that you want. But rather than spending 2 hours drafting up those 12 slides and then a half hour fine tuning it, let Copilot draft those 12 slides, and then you spend the half hour fine tuning it and making it your voice as well too. So there's a lot of creative solutions that it can pull into this as well. And you can use it in different ways. So Scott's going to show some examples about looking at his calendar and how that helps him be able to plan his days out. And the way he does it might be differently than you want to do it, but that's the beauty of it. As we mentioned, you can work very seamlessly across all the different Microsoft 365 applications and use some of those loop components to pull them into different applications. You can automate tasks. So again, there's a lot of things you can do just asking Copilot and being able to trigger tasks from there. But then you can also take advantage of tools like Power Automate to extend that even further. And it just gives you a chance to leverage the power of the internet and all that data that's out there to be able to come up with a more intelligent approach. Like, why spend an hour researching something online and Googling it or using Bing or whatever your search tool is to find stuff? Ask for a quick summary from the internet through Copilot, and you can get going a lot faster. So with that, I'll hand it back to Scott to show off a little bit of the chat experience and how that works, and a few of the other applications that you can use inside of Copilot for Microsoft 365.
Yeah, Eric, really appreciate it. So this will only take about a minute here. So let's go ahead and start this off. Basically, what I have here is a Copilot experience that I did inside of my environment, right? So as you can see here, I'm asking it to provide a summary of the remaining meetings that I have for the week and what I should be doing to prepare for each of these meetings. The cool thing about this is that this could be something that you set up, for example, to be something that you do every morning potentially. You could do it for just the day. You could do it for the week. You could do it on Monday. You could do it on Wednesday, right? And the cool thing about this is that it actually goes through all the different calendar events that I have in my Outlook calendar through the website right here. As you can see, I'm at www.microsoft365.com in the chat experience, and it provides then all of that detail then regarding all those different meetings and the preparation steps that are probably listed in the description of that particular meeting. Now, another feature that you can do with this is the fact that you can tell it, for example, to change the format of what you want that display to be. So in this example, I was being more specific in saying I want a table that has the meeting date and time, the subject, the participants, the key preparation points, as well as additional information that maybe I should know about that may be in an email or a PowerPoint that may be attached then potentially to that particular topic or that meeting. So you can see here that it basically goes through and then builds out basically that table with the information to then highlight those particular details. And like Eric had mentioned before, we can use the Microsoft Loop component then as an example to basically take that and then save it. You can see this edit in pages at the bottom there, but that would allow you then to share that potentially with others as well as you go through that. So a lot of cool capabilities here, Eric. And as you can see, this is just touching really the tip of the iceberg of what you can do then with the chat experience inside of M365.
Yeah, there's so much more you can do with it. As you notice on here, there's a work and there's a web too.
Okay.
So again, this is on the work setting where it's looking at your data. So don't think that somebody else could go in and search for this because it happens to be on the web. That's a work only capability.
Yep.
But next, why don't you talk a little bit about Teams meetings and using Copilot chat in there? This is probably the first feature that people use in Copilot for Microsoft 365, because anyone who's seen this is like, wow, I got to have that. So basically what it is it allows you to track it takes a transcript of everything that was said within the meeting, and these transcripts are far, far better than anything you may have seen a few years ago as well, too. For those of you who've done transcripts 5 years ago and you're like, yeah, it's about 75% right. This is really close to 100% right. So it takes all of those notes and then it summarizes them intelligently and sends them out. And you can do things like, if you show up to a meeting late, it can kind of get you up to speed on the meeting. You can also say, for me, I can't make it to every meeting that I would like to be involved in. I can click follow, and it will actually give me a summary of a meeting that I wasn't in. And so those are some really great features that you can take advantage of with these Teams meetings. So let's have Scott show a little bit about putting this into action.
Yeah, and so the one I'm going to highlight here really, Eric, is going to be that intelligent recap, right? I'm going to pop this on the screen so you can see kind of the build out of all the different panes and content that you can interact with. To your point, Eric, very common where I'll be double booked and one meeting, I can only be present at one meeting at a time. Back in the day, I'd have two phones up, right, going through and doing it. But nowadays, we can do the follow up with it. So I wanted to kind of show them that recap. So that way you can kind of understand then how you can get up to speed very quickly then in these meetings. And once again, remember, because these transcripts that are stored in terms of Teams are in the Graph API, there's a really cool feature. You can ask about it then in the M365 portal as well, which is really beneficial when you're trying to find additional detail. So I'm going to show this example. This is one of our Revenue Town meetings that we typically do, where basically we have a highlight here of all the greatness that we have done for the year, right? So we've got performance, we've got celebrations and recognitions, and you can see here that even though it summarized that section, we've got additional detail that we discussed during the meeting that's actually present. You can see at the bottom here that I can see where each person was talking for their section inside of the town hall. We have, for example, the content in the top right as well as the transcript data that's inside of here that you can access, download, and then interact with, obviously. So the reason I highlight this is because if you think about some of those Copilot capabilities that you may want to tackle, such as how many times was I mentioned in the meeting, if you want to look at it from that perspective, you can use the Copilot experience then as well to drill down and ask questions of the data that you're interacting with within that Teams meeting even after that meeting has concluded. So this is a really powerful feature. I use it every single day. And like you said, Eric, it definitely makes it easier when you want to follow up with some of these different types of topics that need to be tackled. As you can see here, you can do recaps, you can identify different perspectives on the topics that people had, and it just helps you really go through that information a lot faster as a part of that process.
Yeah, it's a great tool. So many people are using this now. If you are using Zoom as for some of your meetings, there's like an add-on that you can buy, this Read AI that I see a lot of people using today. But with Microsoft, you can just do all that in Teams. You don't have to buy multiple different tools to be able to use this. So
Yep.
certainly is a more efficient way of being able to take advantage of it. And then Scott's got a video he'll share as well on how to use Copilot chat in Outlook. And I've used this quite a bit to draft email messages, especially like emails where somebody says, I'm requesting a donation for something I don't want to actually uh, give a donation to. So I want to say something nice back to them, but I've always struggled to like word those. And so now I just put it in draft with Copilot. I say, hey, give me a suggested approach to respond to this particular email. So it makes it go a lot faster because I usually dread responding to those types of messages.
Right. I can understand that completely, Eric. So let me just show that then, right, in terms of what Outlook can do with that. So really cool features here as well. Once again, I believe in demoing production, right? So this is stuff that I use all the time. And so I want to kind of highlight that as we go through this process. So I'm in the new version of Outlook. So you have to be in Outlook new for it. And I picked out an email. I've got this Copilot training for executives that I want to look at. Well, I already look at the email. I want a summary. So at the very top, what I do is I click on the summarize this email, and it tells me there are some training sessions that are available and space is limited and registration is required. You can see in the email there are date and times, and I don't want to look at my calendar. I just want to show my availability so I can attend these meetings, and I want Copilot to take a look at that email, take the content inside of it, identify when those dates are, look at my calendar, and then make a recommendation on what date I would have available then to participate in this session. So you can see here it went through and identified it. It told me when I am free and when I am not free. And so it was able to do that. Well, what I'm going to do here really quickly as well, though, is I was like, well, wait a second. This would be a great meeting as well for the other pre-sales architects inside of our organization. So I basically went into here then for the draft with Copilot, very similar to Eric, kind of what you had mentioned before. I have a typo in there on purpose as well. The reason I'm highlighting that, remember, you can have quite a bit of typos that are in your prompts and it will still recognize the intent of what you're trying to get across. But you can see here, I was able to very quickly go through and then draft up this email. And what's really cool about this now is that they're adding features like at the bottom here where you can keep it, you can regenerate it, you can say add more of a specific type of a tone to it. But what's really cool here is that I'm able to actually send this then to the pre-sales team in our demo environment here, and then from there forward that on as a part of that process. So this shows an example then of taking an email, identifying your calendar, reacting to it, drafting a new email that you're going to send to others that you're forwarding this with, and then very quickly then reacting to all of that, right? So it's just a really powerful tool in making it faster to get your job done. What we did here would have typically taken me an additional 5 minutes because I'd have to open the calendar and do additional actions to figure things out. Whereas with this, I was able to do it, as you can tell here, in basically a minute as we went through the process. So a pretty cool capability, Eric, to boot.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking it would probably take 15 minutes for me
Right?
because I would start typing it up and then I'd get distracted and then I'd get back to it and then I'd get distracted again. And anyway, just getting it all done within a minute and a half is great. So next we want to show what you can do in PowerPoint. I've used this a few times where I've got a Word document that's been written up and I want to be able to summarize that into a PowerPoint and get that, change the media of how it's being displayed. So Scott's got an example here of how you can do that, where you can take content that you've produced and have it generate a PowerPoint for you. And again, you're going to want to edit it before you share it or send it out, but boy, this saves you a lot of time.
It's a huge time saver, and I'll just show it with a real world scenario once again, right? So in this scenario, we've got a bunch of for medical device, which is an industry that we support. We had a bunch of notes that we generated within AI, and we put those basically in a Word document. And what I want to do is I want to generate a PowerPoint then from that Word document. So you can see here what I'm doing is I'm going ahead and saying create a presentation from the file, what I called our medical device AI dump. So I just did ChatGPT, dumped a bunch of information, and then put it into a Word document as we were going through our research. Now, as we went through this, we can see that basically we have different ideation, basically different stages of medical device manufacturers. And what we're able to do then is have Copilot go through and take that initial stab at basically generating then a PowerPoint based upon the content that's in that Word document. Now, the cool thing about this is that it takes those main points and brings them then into the PowerPoint. So you can use then the other tools in PowerPoint to start making it look prettier by basically then using the designer to format it better. And then finally, to use the designer as well to even introduce like video elements to make it pop as an example. So this is a really important capability where if you think about it, once again, it goes to that assistive technology where what you're doing is you're basically using then Copilot to go ahead and take that initial generation as a part of it. Now, one final thing to note, and I did show it inside of this portion of it as well, in all of the applications that you interact with then from a Copilot perspective on M365, remember, you can use it also to research data. So it's not just about content generation and building things, but this is an example of me looking at all of our internal documentation around AI for medical device, and it accumulates that detail, as you can see in the first section, which is the business content. But then what it does is it goes out onto the web and then does a search as well to find additional content for basically those themes for 2025, right? Where AI will be critical in medical device. So once again, just another example of going faster, of taking content and having it generated, and then for you to go through and then massage what you want to be more important, what you like, what you don't like, and basically from there to add your theming and your capability to make it ultimately your own as you go through that process.
Great. And then one last feature set we want to show off, and this is using Copilot chat in Word. So now you'll see that when you pop up Word, you'll have this draft with Copilot capability that comes up right away. And so instead of you thinking about how you're going to get this started and typing out 5 or 6 paragraphs, just describe what you want it to be. Remember, as you're prompting it, use intentional words like, I want this to be 4 paragraphs or 6 paragraphs. I want this to be written in executive format. I want this to be written like I'm a 5-year-old. Whatever conditions that you want to put on that, make sure you type that in to the prompt when you do that, and then it will generate content to reflect that. So again, talk about what audience this is going to be written for, engineers, or this is going to be written for salespeople, or whoever it might be, just to make sure that it is drafted in the right tone so you don't have as much cleanup work to do after that. But Scott will show you here how he's used this.
Right? That you nailed it, Eric. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and go through this. So here's Word. You can see at the very top, even they've even updated. It used to be where you had to be in the main section. You can see here in my layout, Copilot, the first portion of it's becoming more prominent here as we have the new application updates. So one of the things I wanted to go through is basically taking a manufacturing process flow that I designed, and I want to create a Word document with it, right? So this is the inverse example where we're going from a PowerPoint and we're generating a Word document from that. So you can imagine you could do this with other Word documents, other files. You could do even technically with images. Generate a paragraph, for example, of this image. There are just a lot of capabilities here. So you can see at the very bottom, as I've kind of scrolled through here, that particular scenario looks like it's egg production with MTech and Dynamics 365. And at the bottom here, I can give it additional content, right? So add some additional verbose points from other sources of data to help support the points that are in each of these particular topics in the Word document, right? So now what I'm doing is I'm taking the the PowerPoint document, and also I'm saying add additional details based upon your interpretation of, for example, that slide. And you can see here, like with the inbound order queue as an example, it tells me then it's a standard view. We can effectively manage it in this way. It can be customized as an example as well. So it added additional content that was not in the PowerPoint document as well as a part of it. And what's cool about this, to the tone that Eric talked about as well, I can make it professional. I can make it formal. I can make it casual. I can make it more engineering specific as an example, right? So there's different options then that you have really to be able to go through and drive that. And you'll see as I do this, it basically is going through and then regenerating, adding, for example, the enhancing operational efficiency subtitle as a part of it as well. But it still keeps then all the prior points that I made, but it just formalizes that language around it. Now, one last thing as well inside of here, on the far right here, if I click on Keep It, what I can also do is I can use, once again, the actual chat-based capabilities to basically ask questions of different areas. So as an example here, we're talking about egg production. Well, I don't know anything about, for example, what influences eggs. And we can see here that HPA, highly pathogenic avian influenza, HPAI, excuse me, is a big impactor in terms of our egg prices, right, that we're dealing with. So just something to note here is that this allows you then obviously to create files very quickly off of the content that's there. And like I said before, it's so much faster to have content generated that's new for you that you can then review versus coming up with that content to start and then from there, kind of modifying it. So once again, it just helps you go faster as you go through that process. Eric, I think that kind of wraps up the scenarios for us today.
Yeah, so this is just a flavor of what you can do in Copilot for Microsoft 365. We didn't show off Excel or OneNote or Loop or Whiteboard or any of those other components. And we haven't even touched on Copilot for sales, service, finance, Copilot Studio. So there's a ton more that you can do with Copilot as well too, but we wanted to give you a flavor of where people typically start. And so these are things you can take advantage of right away within your tenant once you get Copilot set up and running. So now let's talk a little bit about what does it take to get Copilot set up and running. So what do we need to do next? So you are now here in this, on the far left of your screen here. This is the Meet Copilot webinar. So the intent is to give you a sense of what you can do with it. And from the next step, you'll be working with our team to come up with what the right next step is for you. So we'll do a pre-engagement kickoff with our team. We'll talk about the next steps and what exactly order you want to go through this process. Typically, we start with security and make sure that security is in proper place before you go any further from that. We'll also do a business value assessment, just getting a sense from you now that you've gotten to see a few different ways you can use it. Like, where do you want to start? Where do you think you can get business value from that? So those will lead into our security workshop and remediation session, and then we'll do a business value workshop where we'll go through how you're going to use this capability and customize that for you. Then from there, we're going to go into user enablement and training. We'll go through a user adoption and help you with that as well too. Again, this is all new technology, and you'll have certain team members who will jump at the chance of using it and others who will be a little skeptical about it. So we'll just talk through how to work through those scenarios. And then as you start using it, we'll monitor it and support it and give you some ideas on how often this is being used. Are there some folks that aren't taking advantage of it that you want to go back and maybe give them additional training? We'll be able to provide you a value report showing you how people are using it, where they're using it, so you can look at how you're getting value out of it and make sure that you feel like you are getting the value out of it as well. So the next step then is to go through this Copilot Flight School, and this is a packaged offering we have for you that will get you those 10 seats of Copilot for Microsoft 365, that workshop, help you with the deployment and configuration, the end user communication, give you some dedicated user training as well. And then we'll do those weekly check-ins and flight value report so you know how you're getting value out of this investment that you're making. And then beyond that, if you want to continue to do more, we have extended flight school, which will take you in further direction, get more people on the platform, or take advantage of more capability. We can deploy and expand from there. And like I mentioned, check out Confab or some of the other Stoneridge Software websites to learn more about Copilot Studio, but that's a great option for bringing more automation capability to your environment once you've got Copilot stood up. So where to go from here? So review the benefits. So watch the video, make sure that you're comfortable with how you're going to use it and where you're going to use it, and come up with a list of who you want to have use this as well too. It's fine to start with a pilot group and expand from there. And then we'll share the pre-flight checklist with you to make sure that you know what you need to do to get started. So go over that with your IT administrators and make sure you have the right privileges and the right security in place to get started. And then determine your audience and make sure that they're ready to go. And then jump into either that flight readiness path or all the way into flight school so you can go ahead and get started. And then once you've gotten started, just making sure that you're continually reviewing progress to make sure you're getting value from it, and then see if you can expand the audience that's using Copilot to even more folks within your organization.